The world is the self, and the self is imaginary. I'm using the word imaginary in a very broad sense to encompass anything conjured up in the mind, thinking, the concepts that bring features of the world into a certain focus by highlighting features at the expense of others, by bringing conventional understandings, usage, the meaning of concepts, the meaning they acquire through usage, or the circulation of words. That's how meanings accrue. That's how concepts are formed. Conventional understandings, by way of concepts, are brought to bear in revealing the features of the world, while at the same time obscuring these features. So there's a revealing and a concealing simultaneously. So what I'm calling the imaginary includes thinking, social conditioning, changes in our social understandings, circulation of words, which enters into our concepts, language. All of these changeable concepts go into thought. And these are, if you'd like, the building blocks of narratives or stories that we tell ourselves. This is all imaginary in the sense that it's conjured up in the mind. And this content is in itself blind. It's not seeing anything. It's not experiencing anything. A concept only lights up a certain socially conditioned usage, meaning, or a meaning complex. Now, these narratives or stories that we tell ourselves precipitate emotions: fear, anger, shame, pride. The imaginary, though, also includes memory and expectation, our sense of the past and the future, both of which, past and future, to be experienced at all, obviously have to be conjured up in the mind. And this imaginary content by no means has to be conscious. In fact, it's the unconscious contents that drive repetition, all the patterns that we repeat, all the reactivity, and that feels somehow fated, like destiny, inescapable. The center around which all of this imaginary content gathers itself, as galvanized by belief, is the subject, and this rich experience of being a subject, of living directly out of a self or person, a system of ownership that is believed to be in control, that's believed to exercise choice, executive reason. The site, we believe, that performs what we experience as indispensable functions in daily life from moment to moment. This ownership structure leaves us feeling responsible, guilty, proud, competent or incompetent, and it's every bit as much a fiction or construct as deeds, titles of ownership, property rights. In ownership, there's nothing tangible to identify, just as there's nothing tangible to the self or person. The self or person, like a deed or title, is an understanding, a belief, a way of thinking, a set of assumptions. It's an experience, but it's utterly without substance. It's imaginary. So the self experiences itself as isolated within or as a body, and as standing over against a world of things or objects. Its experience is of a subject-object duality. And this experience is deeply convincing. The self seems stubbornly imprisoned in its supposed reality over against a world of things that appear to be concrete and irresistibly real. The self stands apart from the rest of reality or being and imagines a separation between itself and the rest. This separation, of course, is nowhere to be found. There's an epistemological truth, though I'm reluctant to use this terminology, because at the end of the day, what concerns us here has nothing whatever to do with knowing or with knowledge. But this truth is that one never escapes the circle of experience, as well as what I'll call, others have called it, this non-experience, and by that I mean non-objective experience. So one can't find an entity that is a person or a ghost in the machine. And what I'll say in addition, there's no possible stepping out of the circle of experience. We do not experience objects. We do not experience things, or as they've been called, things in themselves. We experience experience. And experience is utterly without substance. The self does not organize, the self does, I should say, organize this experience, but it does so in terms of the past, in terms of knowledge, concepts, feelings, memories, stories, the imaginary. And because much of this experience is either uninteresting or unsatisfying or even painful, there's a continual turning away by the person from what presents itself. And this turning away becomes habitual, leading up over time to the creation of narrow little nooks in which we try to comfortably live out our lives. And our choices all tend toward this, and we find ourselves enclosed within very narrow parameters of experience. This could be as true of the academic who spends a lifetime reading and writing, or a monk who enters a monastery. No one's to blame for this, in that we're all playing the hand we're dealt. We're always, in fact, playing our highest card. We're bound hand and foot to the good. Now, I don't have in mind in this regard Plato in particular. The good is a constant of being with regard to human existence. It doesn't make sense to think of choices we might have made or alternate histories and then to feel good or bad about those. We are captives of the good, without exception. We're likewise bound to beauty and to love. I think of the good, of beauty, and of love as the faces or fragrances of being, although I'm not being original with that terminology. Being itself is the ultimate paradox. It's the nearest nearness, and yet it doesn't have any location. There's a here and there on a map, north, south, east, west. That's an abstraction, that's imaginary. But there is no absolute place. There's no direction, no space, and no time. There's only, when I'm talking about this being, the upsurgence, which is perfectly constant and stable. There is only the big bang of creation, which is ongoing and without cessation. This is paradox. This is the ineffable. Not a bit of this being that is utterly without substance, this everything which is in fact nothing and neither. It's something, it's everything, and it's not exactly nothing. It's not exactly everything. It's not exactly nothing. Not a bit of this can be known. And out of this truly wonderful meaninglessness, beauty and love arise as inseparable from it. Being is one whole, entirely without duality, without here and there, without past and future, and without, I should say, true and false. My name is Patrick McCarty. You can reach me by email at my first name without vowels, ptrck, my last name, mccarty at yahoo.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'd be delighted to. I'm in Wisconsin, so if that helps you find me on Facebook, I'd be delighted to chat with anybody who's interested. And I hope to talk to you again soon.